This is a football podcast, man. Meat, football, good. Man, we talk football. We eat burgers. Welcome in to Scramble Drill, episode 2 of our Dynasty Dive. I am Ben. Across from me is Landon Davis. It's week 2. This is our second time doing this, Landon. You excited?
Second time doing it, and we are T-minus 9 days.
Dude.
9 days. Oh my gosh.
I can't. Well, I was talking about this yesterday with Josh, and he was like talking like how he's in a headspace now where like, I don't know if you listened to the episode from yesterday where
I did.
Did you understand what he's talking about?
No, I rarely understand what he's talking about.
Josh is a weird guy if you can't tell from listening to the show.
Yeah, I rarely understand anything he's saying.
But anyway, I don't know what he's talking about.
He does have a kid on the way, so probably that has to do with him not being as locked in, which is understandable. I'll give him that.
I am locked in. I know you are as well.
I'm locked in.
You and I are very much locked in.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So no, I'm so stoked for the season. You gonna be watching any college football this weekend?
No, actually, I'm taking a vacation, going to Texas.
Watching college football is my vacation, dude. Like,
there you go. Going to a couple MLB games.
Oh, who you seeing?
Little rodeo. I'm seeing Kansas City play Houston Friday night, and then going to the Yankees are playing the Rangers, driving up and watching that game on Monday. So should be pretty good.
You're a huge baseball fan. I am, but not nearly to the level as you are. Who are you most excited to see? What player?
Well, there's two guys. One guy who is the best offensive player since prime Barry Bonds, and that's Aaron Judge.
I'll give you that.
Amazes me right now. Right? There's been guys who've had better careers since Barry Bonds.
No one's on his level
He's
right
the
now.
best.
No one is on his level right now.
This guy is crazy. But my new favorite player, I get a new favorite player about once every 5 years. And my new favorite player is Bobby Witt Jr., so I get to see him in Houston, so that'll be pretty cool.
Yeah, that sounds exciting. I'm a little jealous. That would be fun. Okay.
It will be fun. I got my dad, he doesn't know this, but I got us all, for his birthday, tickets they do a fireworks show in Houston on Friday, and you could get tickets to watch them from the field. So
that'd be sick.
We're going on the field to watch the fireworks as a family, so that'll be pretty cool.
That's really cool. All right. Good. We've got a Dynasty episode today. First, we do have some news to get into. First news, this is a big one. Desmond Ridder is being released by the Cardinals.
Man.
I know this is devastating news.
Cardinals fans, I'm sorry to hear this. I mean, this is heartbreaking.
The good news is like it was a net. Nobody netted from that trade because the Falcons traded Desmond Ridder. Obviously, the Cardinals were releasing him. We got Rondale Moore in return, and he's out for the season.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Nobody
he went out for the season.
Nobody gained or lost anything from that.
Yeah. Yeah, and you ripped him off. He's out for the season, and you ripped them off.
Yo, we still got the better end of that deal by far. I was actually excited when we got Rondale. I'm like, that's a decent wide receiver 4.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, another big blow. Kadarius Toney has been released by the Chiefs. It's the end of an era.
I mean, they traded a second for him. Like,
I thought he was still
Giants. The Giants made that pick. He had a lot of talent. It seemed like one of those things where it just didn't work out, and they got a second for him.
That game, I can't remember who it was against, but Toney had like 12 catches for 190 yards. That game carried him for like 3 years.
It did. Yeah, I do remember that. He literally almost went for 200 yards his rookie year.
It was like the third or fourth game of the year, and everybody was like, holy crap, this guy's legit. And
dude, you turned that in one of our leagues. You traded him and a pick for Devontae Smith, right?
I think you're right.
I think that was the trade. I don't remember what the pick was, but like people were high on Kadarius Toney.
Oh yeah, I picked him up off waivers, and I'm like, I'll go. I wanted somebody proven, so it was a.
Oh, you did good.
It was a crafty move.
You did good. You did good.
Next, this will mean more to you and I than probably anyone else. The Browns cut Donta Foreman.
Really?
You and I have had text
no.
conversations about him recently. Do you want to explain to everyone?
Okay, let me just go on a mini Donta Foreman rant. This is the best player in the NFL that no one wants. Every
How many
year
teams has he been with
goes
now?
to a team. I don't know. He goes to a team. Their starter gets hurt, and the starter's out for 6 weeks, and Donta Foreman gives you 22 carries for $130 and 2 touchdowns every week.
Every time.
And you're like, why does no one want this guy? And no one does.
He must
no
be like
one
a horrible
cuts
locker
him.
room guy or something.
Yeah, he must be the worst guy of all time because everyone cuts him, and he produces every chance he gets. I tried to pull off a trade in the scramble drill league we're in, and tried to have him as a throw-in to get him on my team. Now the trade didn't work out, but like that was the throw-in I wanted. I wanted Donta Foreman.
Yeah, like
he's going to give me 4 weeks this year. He's going to be top 8 running back.
I can't wait for the second half of this season where he has 800 yards in 6 weeks.
Oh, dude,
it's going to be amazing.
He's going to Dallas, and those running backs are going to get banged up.
Oh, I didn't even think about Dallas, dude.
He's going to go for a month, and he's going to be the RB4 over that month, and you're going to be like, why does everyone cut him?
He's going to be this year's Gus Edwards.
Yeah, but he's better.
Yeah, where you're going to be like at one point like, why is he averaging 19 points a week?
I don't know. Donta Foreman, the best player in the league no one wants.
Yeah. Someone is going to sign him. Like he's going to have 800 yards with the Bengals this year. And it's going to be the entire back half of the season.
We're spending a little too much time on Donta Foreman here.
But
I had to get that off my chest.
This is more you and I's text conversation we had, but I enjoyed it personally.
Yes, absolutely. He did it with the Texans. He did it with the Panthers. He did it with, where was he with last year? The Bears. Every team he goes on a month stretch where he dominates.
Yeah.
But
so if you want
he's not going to be doing it in Cleveland.
If you want a playoff push, pick the right time to pick up Donta Foreman and it'll work for you.
I will say, in all reality, I mean, is this decent news for Nick Chubb?
I kind of thought a similar thing. I'm like, I guess that means Chubb is maybe closer to a return than, or maybe is as close as we hope he is.
Right. He's not ready, clearly, and he won't be.
He's going to be on the pup to start,
Chubb.
I think.
Yeah, he won't be Nick Chubb possibly all year, but like
maybe ever again.
It's decent. It's better than if they were adding more running backs. Then we'd be like, oh, Nick Chubb's not ready. But I mean, if they feel like, hey, we can get rid of this guy, maybe Nick Chubb's, getting a 50-50 split in week 9 this year or something.
You'll take that.
So
now we have a kind of a stretch of guys who are on IR. Kendre Miller is actually starting the year on IR. I've heard very bad things coming out of camp and the Saints office about him.
Yeah, there has been some weirdness over the last month. I think he's like the biggest faller on keep, trade, cut.
Yeah, apparently the Saints don't even like him.
Yeah, the Saints, well, the current coaching staff is having some trouble. Good thing for Kendre Miller. The current coaching staff will be gone about week 8 this year.
Yeah.
So I think the hate's gone a little far. He was, he's a 3rd round pick. Kamara, he's on a 1-year deal. It's more than 1 year, but they save so much money by not having him on the roster next year. Like Kamara will be gone. I mean, Jamal Williams, really? Are we worried about that?
No, unless he goes back to Detroit.
Yeah, if he goes back to Detroit, then you trade for him.
Yeah, I'm getting a little worried about Gibbs at that point.
Because he's going to score 15 touchdowns.
Yes.
But, I think the hate's gone a little far, actually. I mean, you can get him as a throw-in right now. I would do that. I mean, if you can...
He was a 3rd-round pick.
Yeah, there's worse throw-ins. So, I mean, he's not, obviously, starting on IR is not great, but you don't have to waste a bench spot. You can put him in your IR, and that's always good. So,
yeah,
not a bad throw-in.
2 more handcuffs are out for the year. Season-ending IR for Elijah Mitchell and A.J. Dillon. Again, You're not counting on either one of those guys, particularly for fantasy. At least I hope not, for your sake.
No.
but it does lead to some other interesting conversations, I think.
Right. I think the Elijah Mitchell one for me provides clarity for the RB2 in San Francisco, where I think it's Jordan Mason now.
They did
So if
they
you're a
did have the
McCaffrey
other
owner,
guy, Isaac Guerendo, or
yeah, the freak athlete they drafted.
yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, everything I saw coming out of San Francisco was like, it's Mason and Mitchell. They're battling for the 2 spot. I think if you're the McCaffrey owner and you want your handcuff, I think Mason's your guy. So it does provide a little clarity there. Not that they're going to eat into McCaffrey's workload or anything, obviously, but
I was really worried about
for just
McCaffrey,
insurance.
For Elijah Mitchell. I was really concerned.
Do what?
I was really worried about McCaffrey.
Yeah. Right. I thought they were going to be in a committee. But no. So, I mean, I think it provides some clarity there. And then the A.J. Dillon one, it doesn't mean much for me for Aaron Jones.
You mean Josh Jacobs?
But it is good news, especially dynasty-wise, for Marshawn Lloyd. I mean, I think he's pretty well the clear. And they have other guys there, other backs they like, but I think Marshawn Lloyd, I mean, they drafted him in the 3rd.
I think that
not for no reason.
Bumps Elijah or Marshawn Lloyd, and maybe he was already there, but with no A.J. Dillon at all, he is now one of the elite handcuffs, I would say. Because if something were to happen to Josh Jacobs with Marshawn Lloyd's size, speed, and just ability to catch the ball, I mean, you're looking at a fringe RB1 there if Jacobs is gone. Yeah, so that's interesting. Last thing I wanted to mention, it was something that just happened like a few minutes ago. Apparently, Kyron Williams is the Rams punt returner. I don't know if you even need to read anything into this, but it was just weird to me.
Where did you see that?
I saw it on a news report from Sleeper that apparently Sean McVay said this.
So, I think Sean McVay is just trying to pile on everything he can to Kyron Williams. He found a guy he likes, and he's like, we're using him for everything. He'll return kicks. He might play safety this year. Who knows?
Yeah, there may be nothing to read into this at all. I genuinely don't know. I just saw it, and I'm like, that's weird. You don't see many starting running backs returning punts?
Yeah, I don't. My initial reaction is Rams do some weird things with running backs. So I'm not like, for instance, last year in the preseason training camp time, it came out that Antonio Gibson was going to return kicks for Washington. And at that point I was like, okay, well, he's nothing. He's not relevant in the offense at all. And we were right. Brian Robinson got so many carries and so much of the work. I don't feel the same way with this. I don't feel like, oh, this is a committee with Blake Corum. That's not my feeling right now. I still think Kyron's the lead guy. But it is weird. It is something to.
I'm not panicking on Kyron Williams. I'm kind of with you by any means, but it was something like it's a little blip on the radar that's like that's not normal. So we'll see.
So,
all right. Let's move on to our main topic today, which is tips for that. We have like a little bit of contending tips, but it's mainly tips about rebuilding. And it's kind of cool. We'll dive into it in the episode, but there's no one specific template for rebuilding. Like if you're rebuilding, you do this. Not necessarily. There's a lot. There's a lot of intricacies that go into rebuilding a dynasty team. So let's just start out, get it out of the way quick. Quick tips for a rebuilder. Go.
So,
sorry.
Don't know
for contender. Sorry. Let's finish with rebuilding.
Oh, you want to go contender first?
Contender first.
We'll go contender first.
It'll be quick.
So, contender's pretty simple. Like if you're rebuilding, you're laying the foundation for your house. If you're contending, you're basically painting the walls and picking out couches. Like it's pretty simple. Get points in your lineup. That's what you're trying to do. Now, where the questions start coming in is the value you have, the young value you have. How do you use that to not tank your team for 2 years down the road and still be able to win the championship? So the discussion that's interesting to me about contenders is what to do with your first round pick. So we are both okay if you are a contender with trading your first, right?
You,
Some people
you and
will tell
I,
you never do.
I will be honest with you. It is very rare that you and I make a pick in the first round that is our own pick. It doesn't happen often.
Right. So we are very okay with trading your first if you think you can win the league. Like I am a guy who, if I'm playing, I'm trying to win. I'm not about just accumulating the most value I can. I know there's a lot of Dynasty people out there that will say that's what it's all about. It's all about value. And it's a lot of it is, but to me,
To a
it's
certain
about
extent,
winning.
yes.
Yeah. So we are okay with selling your first. If I could give a contender a tip, hold that first till if your league does trade deadlines, hold it till then. If they just do like no trade deadline, hold it till right close to when the playoffs start. Just because for me, one, people don't always like score and produce the way you think they're going to. Like, just for instance, in my mind, last year preseason, people were selling first for Josh Jacobs all the time, or including their first for Josh Jacobs because of the season he was coming off of. He was just the standard RB1, the PPR RB3. Is that right?
Yeah.
Something like that. And
Great.
so people were sending
It's
first
very
for
good.
him. Oh, great. People were sending first for him, or like having a package that included their first to get him. And then he just didn't produce the same way. If last year you hold on to that first till, week 12, week 13, you realize, hey, he's not producing like that. I'm not going to trade my first for him. Or another example, maybe if you were a strong contender in the preseason, I'm sure there were people putting together packages that included their first to get Nick Chubb. And then what happens, whatever it was, week 2, 3? Yeah, you were one of them. Yes, you went all out in one of our leagues, got Nick Chubb, and week 2 happens, or whatever week it was, and he's gone for the year. So the longer you can hold that pick, again, I'm okay with trading it. I am okay with trading it. But the longer you can hold it. I think
this past year, and you were rebuilding in the granddaddy of them all, our OG league, that's the first pick you've made that was yours in like 4 years.
Oh, it's been a while.
It's been a long time.
We're okay with trading it. But if you're a contender, if you can hold on to that until week 12, 13, for the reasons of you'll have more information on who's actually scoring a lot of points, and you'll have more information of who's hurt. Like, there's a lot less chance someone gets hurt week 12 to 17 than week 1 to 17.
Yeah.
So the longer you can hold that, the better. Also, the longer you hold it, there's teams in your league that think they're competing, and it's going to turn out that they're not. So once they hit week 11, they're like, oh, I'm not going to win. I might as well trade, some of these producing players. That just brings in a whole nother pool of people that you'll be able to buy and try to win your league. So I would try to hold that first if I'm a contender as long as I can.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree. There's not a whole lot to nitpick. Just get your points in your lineup, but don't overcommit before you know for sure. I try to, at least for me. Now, I don't always live by this rule. You've seen it burn me in the past, but by week 4, I think I'm more comfortable doing it because if I'm 3-1 in week 4 and the team is like second or third in points, I think you're safe to commit at that point. But
yeah, that's a good point too. If you're one of those where you don't know where you're at on the competing scale, use max points 4. I think that's a good metric because that really shows how good your team is. Like how many points you're scoring relative to the rest of the league. If you get to week 6 and let's say you're 5-1, you've had a great record, but you're like in a 12-team league, you're like 5th or 6th in max points 4.
You're getting a little lucky.
Maybe you're getting a little lucky. Maybe you don't go all in. But if you're like 3-4 after week 7, but you're second in max points 4, you can start to think, okay, I'm still really good. I can win this league.
Yeah, we've got a guy like in our League of Ordinary Gentlemen, Landon Hewell, who's a friend of the show, obviously. He just things didn't go his way during the regular season. He was like 3-3 in week 6, but he was first in points, by like 300. Like it was something ridiculous. He was outscoring the rest of the league. It's like, obviously your team is probably the best in the league. He's just been unlucky.
Right. I won the granddaddy of them all one year and started 1-7.
I remember that.
I started 1-7. I was trying to sell.
That.
I was trying to sell and no one was buying. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to try to win. And ran the table.
Let's just not talk about it. This brings back bad memories.
I shouldn't
for
bring
me.
up these old memories.
I have never won this league. I've had the best team for the past, overall, like for the past 5 years, would you say? Probably the best team. Years. And just can't finish.
You've been first or second best for the vast majority of this league.
Yeah, so luck does play a factor into it at some point. Like
it does.
I've done everything to put the team in the position to win, and it just hasn't happened. So
and that's one more tip, and this is the last contender tip. I said I had one, and this is the third one I'm giving. But just because you don't have the best team on paper doesn't mean you're not a contender. Like, don't think, oh, that team is way better than mine, so I can't compete. I can't contend. There's luck involved, man. The best team doesn't always win. So, don't just look at another team and think, well, they're so good, I just better sell. No. I mean, if you're in the top 2 or 3, even 4, you can win. You can get lucky. Who knows? Maybe you just throw in a flex player. You don't have a lot of confidence in them, but they have a monster week in the championship and you win. Like, that happens.
Yeah. No, I've got examples of that for me too. Like I just mentioned in our League Board Gentlemen, where Landon Hewell was very unlucky. I have a very good team in that league. It is very good, admittedly, but it's not the best on paper. Like if you compare starting lineups, I think Landon Hewell has a better team than me. I think Josh in that league has a better team than me, but my team is still the third best team in the league, and I've won 2 out of the past 3 championships because when you get in that playoffs, anything can happen. Right.
Sometimes Jamar Chase scores 50.
I broke Landon Hewell's heart that 2 years ago. He had the best team, but I beat him by like 150 points in the championship. It's a 2-week championship because of Chase and Burrow. And then this past year, he had one unlucky week in the semifinal, and just it didn't go right for him. He would have beaten me in the championship, but he just didn't quite make it.
And that happens too. I mean, sometimes I hate to do this, bring this up again, but sometimes you're in a playoff game and Justin Jefferson has 1 catch for 15 yards. Like, and he's on your opponent's team.
It can happen to anyone.
It can happen. It can happen. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk the meat of this episode. There's a whole lot more to get into when talking about rebuilding. So what do you think is the most important, or at least your top tip, if you're going into rebuilding a league?
So people need to know this about me. I am not a rankings dynasty player. I don't really care about wide receiver rankings, running back rankings, all that. I'm a strategy guy. So I like looking at your team builds, thinking about it that way. So like these are the conversations that I feel like I have some insight on. So to lay the groundwork for my number 1 tip is, when you are rebuilding, think of hopefully 1 year rebuild, at most 2. Do not be the guy that is planning for 2028. You're like, oh, that's my year. Like, that is just...
And I've seen that happen before, dude. Yeah. Our buddy Jake, he and it is, and to his credit, it's finally coming to fruition, but he acquired a massive amount of 2024 picks. And this was in like 2021 he did this. And like you just don't understand, like 3 years away, that is a long time for your team to be bad. That is a long time.
My gosh. Yeah, so
and his team's still not contending. Like, there's no guarantee that all of that pans out anyway.
Yeah, I rebuilt in 2 different leagues last year. It's really not fun. Like, Sundays are just not fun when you're rebuilding. You just get beat, and
it's fun to think about it and plan it and make those trades and do that. But when you're watching football, knowing like this team's not trying to win right now, I have nothing to pull for.
Oh boy, I hope Roshan Johnson has a big week, or I'm gonna get killed.
Or you can be like our buddy Landon Hewell last year. So he was rebuilding in one league, was playing me in another league, and was contending in another. He benched DJ Moore the week he had like 60 points. He benched him in one of our leagues, and he lost because of it. I started DJ Moore against him in another league and beat him because of it. And he started DJ Moore in a league where he's rebuilding and won because of it.
Oh, the DJ Moore trifecta.
Those scary wins in a rebuilding league will scare you sometimes too.
Yeah. So, anyways, but all that being said, to get to my first most important rebuilding tip, and this is for any rebuild, any stage, is to know your league settings. Know your scoring settings. Scoring settings are important, right?
This
PPR.
It feels like a dumb question or a dumb thing to say, but then when you think about it, like you were going to continue, but like it's
right.
Yeah.
Knowing half point PPR versus PPR, tight end premium, 1.5 tight end premium, points per passing touchdown, those things are important. But really what matters when you're thinking about a rebuild and how you're going to approach it is the two most important things are, well, one would be super flex, obviously. If it's super flex or 1 QB, that changes everything. But league size and lineup, like how many people you play in your lineup size. Those are the two most important things because that affects what makes a good trade and what makes a bad trade for a rebuild so heavily. So heavily. A good trade in a 10-team league is probably a terrible trade in a 14-team league.
Yeah.
So knowing roster size, lineup size, and league size is probably the number one tip you can have when going into a rebuild, for me at least.
Yeah. And like just for an example, I would guess, in our oldest Dynasty league, it's an 8-team, 1-quarterback league. Yep. So the guys who are the true studs carry an absolutely unbelievable amount of value. Like guys like Jefferson and Bijan and Chase and those guys, they're just untouchable for the most part. Like you can't offer me enough because the league is small and the starting lineups are small. I just want the guy who's going to score the most points. That's all you care about. So trading, and it's not necessarily even great trade another league, but like so let's say somebody offers you T. Higgins and 2 firsts for Justin Jefferson, and you are a rebuilding team. Mm-hmm. In that league, it's still like even if I'm rebuilding and I have Jefferson, I'm not taking that deal.
You can't do it.
But in the 12-team league, T. Higgins and 2 firsts,
right?
And you're trying to rebuild, yeah, I can do that.
Right. And that's why it's so important to understand your league settings. Because when you're building your team, if you're building, let's say you're in a 10-team, let's say you're in a 10-team Superflex league, right? That versus a 14-team Superflex, you think, oh, it's Superflex, quarterbacks are super valuable. Well, the shallower the league, the less valuable they are.
Yeah.
Like the shallower the league, like in a 10-team Superflex, guys like your Baker Mayfields, guys like your, I mean, maybe Kirk Cousins an example.
Matthew Stafford.
Guys who are like, like I'll give you a great example. Jared Goff in a 10-team Superflex is really not that valuable. I mean, you can trade him for not that much, but Jared Goff in a 14-team league or even a 12, like as your QB2 is so valuable. So, but knowing those differences, knowing like, okay, how should I value quarterbacks based on this league size? How should I value, let's say like a wide receiver like, let me think, who's good,
Let's go Rome Odunze.
Rome Odunze, okay. Well, Rome Odunze,
I don't know if that was a good example or not.
He's got a chance to be elite. I'm thinking more of like a guy who's going to produce like Jaden Reed or Deontay Johnson, somewhere in that range of production. Yeah. Like in Mully, when I say Mully, I mean it's an 8-team 1 QB.
That's our OG league. Mully is the OG league.
That's our OG league. Yeah, like I don't want to say you don't want them, but they're never going to play for you. If they're playing for you, you're not going to win.
Yeah, if they're playing for you, you need to be looking to the future.
Right, but if you're in a 12 team, start 11 or 12 and start 3 wide receivers, 3 flex, whatever. Like you want those guys. Those are filling out your lineup, and they're going to help you compete. So it's knowing those differences in league settings that can really help you lay the correct foundation for how to compete in the given league.
Yeah, and that's one of the scary things about like trade calculators is people can plug any trade into a trade calculator and say this is fair, and that's why you have to know your league. I'm like, okay, T. Higgins in a first for Marvin Harrison Jr., the trade calculator says it's fair, but it's like Mully, it's a 1-quarterback league. That's not even close for him versus in a 12, like say the Scramble Drill league we're in, it's a 12-team league, but you start 11. 3 wide receivers, 3 flexes. You start a lot of guys. It's a whole different conversation because you're getting 2-for-1s or one player for 2 are so much better in that league versus if you're trading in Mully, you want to be doing a 2-for-1.
Right. And when we say it's an 8-team 1 QB, the Dynasty like diehards are like, why are you even playing in that? If you saw the value you have to give up to get elite players in that league, you'd be like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, everybody's like, it's stupid. Like, it's an 8-team league. I'm like, no, just the strategy is completely different.
It's so hard to win. Like, every team is good. There's not one rebuilding team in that league this year. Not one team is rebuilding.
Some should, but
it's like, how do you win? If everybody's competing, how do you win? So anyways, knowing your league settings is probably if you're going to set the correct foundation, you want to know, okay, what wins this league? What is the makeup that wins this league? Is it depth? Is it elite talent? Is it having 3 quarterbacks? Is it, if you're in a 1 QB shallow league, do I just need 1 and I'll stream on his bye? Like, those kind of things are very important if you want to build the right team.
Yeah. Yeah, that is if I had to pick one thing that we talk about the rest of this episode, like just have an understanding of your league.
That's half the battle.
Yeah.
That's half and there's some leagues out there that are so deep. Like we're talking like I was listening to some podcast the other day. I don't remember which one it was, but it was a 28-team 1 QB.
Why?
And the guys were talking about it, and because someone sent in a trade, and they were like asking their advice, and they were like, "We don't even know how to look at a 28-team league. Like we don't even know what that is."
I would not have a clue how to evaluate that.
No. But then they were like, it was a quarterback trade, and they were like, "Wait a second, 1 QB, 28-team league. That means quarterbacks are as valuable as a super flex 14-team league."
Yeah.
If you do the math on that.
That means there's
okay, so we can
somebody who doesn't have starting quarterbacks, like starting level quarterbacks.
Right. Yeah. But my point is the trades you make depend more on the size of your league and lineup than any other thing. It means more than tight end premium. It means more than 6 point per passing. It means more than any of that. The size of your league is a huge deal. So know that if you're going to start a rebuild.
Yeah.
And know how to exploit that.
Yeah, that is another thing to do is understanding your league mates in that same tier.
Yep.
All right.
That's tip number 1.
What's the we're just the tip of the iceberg here. What's number 2, Landon?
I'm going to go with I think 6 tips today, but when I started making this list, I had 10 in about 3 minutes, and I've cut it down to 6. So
yeah, and you've just rebuilt in 2 leagues too, so this is still fresh on the mind.
Right. So it's fresh. If you're going to start a rebuild, when you are making trades or using the waiver wire or whatever, load up on handcuff running backs. Get them as throw-ins. Use waiver wire ads. Like if you have open bench spots, like you don't need a ton of running backs if you're in a rebuild. You really don't want producing running backs because they get injured. You want to trade them. But if you can load up on handcuffs, man, Because you think right now, Marshawn Lloyd's not a great example because he's so young, so he's relevant to a rebuild. But like an Alexander Madison or like a Antonio Gibson or something, like you think those guys are not worth anything right now. They're not worth anything. I promise you, guys, I promise you, if you get to week 11 and there's a contender who's had Ramondre Stevenson and he's had a decent year and Ramondre gets hurt, he will send you more than you can imagine for Antonio Gibson.
And even then,
like,
if they don't get hurt, like if there's a trade deadline in the league and I'm a contender, I want that safety blanket going into after the trade deadline. Like they'll still give you something for the backup.
Right. I'm not saying you're going to get a first for him or something, but I guarantee you're just going to get more than you think. It's just going to return what you invested in it. Whatever you invested, you'll get more for it.
Even
you'll
then,
be able to flip those.
If it's a second, like you're a rebuilder, you do not care about the points in your lineup right now. That second does you way more good.
Yeah, and I guarantee you, people are, if you're listening, you're like, there's no way somebody's going to give you a second for Antonio Gibson. I'm telling you, the scenario exists where a contender who's been riding Ramondre Stevenson, if he's going to miss 6 weeks and it's week 13, they will send you something you would not expect to get that type of player. So handcuff running backs, I mean, they're so good for a rebuild. Just obviously you're not wanting them to produce in your lineup just to trade. I mean, I did that last year and I did a pretty good job with that. I was able to get some seconds. I was able to use that to my advantage. So definitely stack up on those.
Yeah, you tried to do that to me. Trying to give me get a second for Roschon Johnson.
No, last year I did do that to you. I had to give up 2 handcuffs, but I got a second.
Yeah, you did.
Chuba Hubbard and Gainwell.
I think I had like 2 seconds though, so I was fine parting with one.
You had 2 or 3, and again, at home you're gonna think, oh, Ben's an idiot. You don't even understand the values in that league. The values in that league are crazy. So
yeah,
that's what you have to pay to get. Yeah. Anyways. But yeah.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Rebuilds. Kind of to piggyback off that is, it's almost playing the potential value versus the actual value themselves with those guys. Is 9 out of 10 times they're not actually going to do anything for your fantasy team, but it's just capitalizing on the situation and the owner of. It's more of the fear than anything else, or the hope that this guy pans out.
Right. And you can always get thirds for him. You can always get thirds.
Yeah, that's worst case scenario. Like I don't need him anyway, so here.
And a third is more valuable than Elijah Mitchell last year on your team. So, yeah.
Especially now that he's out for the year.
Well, yeah.
That helps.
Like Jordan Mason right now, dude, if he's on waivers and you can pick him up as a rebuild, that'd be huge. That would be huge because, like, I'm telling you, and I do not wish this, obviously. Let CMC get nicked this year and see what you get for Jordan Mason. Oh, dude.
Let him be questionable with a hamstring injury in week 6.
See what you get for Jordan Mason. You will get a second. I promise. You will get a second.
All right. Tip number 3.
Tip number 3 is not for right now. This is for during the season. Go all out when elite players get injured. This is a huge one. If you have, like, if you're a big contender and you have it works for running backs, but even receivers, like, let's say Amon-Ra St. Brown gets nicked this year. And, like, there's no team that has Amon-Ra St. Brown that's not counting on him to be really good, right? If you can take that and send anything producing, like anything that scratch and claw, even good young players, even if you can, like if you got Drake London and you're like, oh, this is a piece I'm building around, and then Amon-Ra gets nicked and you can say, all right, I'll give you Drake London plus this producing asset plus a pick plus whatever you got to do, go all out for elite producing players that get injured, elite dynasty assets that get injured, because they're no good to contenders for this year. and it's the cheapest you'll ever get him. It's like Amon-Ra, you basically can't get him without giving up something, a first-round dynasty asset.
A startup asset.
But, first-round startup asset, yeah. But if these players get injured, like I tried last year so hard, folks. Ben,
I was going to mention this, yeah.
had Justin Jefferson, and he gets nicked last year, and Ben was heavy contend, and I was rebuild. And I don't remember the exact trade. It was Waddle, Olave, and Pitts for Jefferson plus something. I don't remember what the something was. And again,
yeah, people are going to say like you're crazy for not taking that. Like you have to factor in it's a small pool of players there.
Yeah, the values are crazy. But I went all out to get Jefferson because I was like, that's what you do as a rebuild.
That was the right thing to do.
That is what you try to get, because when you're a rebuild, a lot of times it means you don't have any good players. And when you don't have any good players, it's so hard to get elite players. You can get wide receiver 2s. You can get your kind of 6 to 8 round running backs. You can get your Rashad Whites and your James Cooks. You can go and acquire those guys. It's so hard to acquire elite assets unless they get injured in the middle of the season. And so even if you have good assets, even if you have, like I mentioned, Drake London, a Chris Olave, Brandon Ayuk, a guy like that, use them in the season if an elite player gets injured to go get them.
Capitalize on opportunities.
Yes, capitalize on that.
Yep, I like that one a lot. Tip number 4.
Tip number 4, and this is something that people who, like when we talked about earlier, you try for 4-year rebuilds, 5-year rebuilds, whatever it is. This is something they deal with. You don't have to trade every producing player. Like if a guy, and I've got some examples of this, if a guy has contract insulation and is not super old, right? Not a 28-year-old running back or not a 30-year-old receiver, you don't have to trade them. I'm thinking about like a lot of rebuilds have questions. Should I trade A.J. Brown? Like he's producing, contenders love him, they'll pay a lot for him. It's like, yeah, man, but in a year, you know who you're going to want on your team? A.J. Brown. Like, he's producing. DJ Moore's another one for me. Like, he's going to produce, and you think, he's getting a little older, isn't he? Can I trade him? He just got a 4-year deal, really a 3-year deal, a true 3-year deal with a chance for 4 years. You don't have to trade him. You don't have to trade that guy. So just because somebody's producing, like you think immediately, oh, they got points, contenders will pay a lot for them, I got to get rid of them. I'm rebuilding. I don't want to win. No, you got to have pieces to build around in your rebuild. It's not enough to just trade everybody for picks. You're not going to win that way. Right. And you might return value, like a trade calculator value on every trade, which is good. We want to return value, but at the end of the day, you got to have pieces that are going to score you points in a year or two when you're going to rebuild. So, or when you're going to contend. So you don't have to trade everyone who is scoring points.
Yeah, no, I definitely, and I think it was interesting you mentioned like A.J. Brown and DJ Moore, because people, me and Josh have talked about it a little bit, and I've listened to other people talking about like it's time to trade A.J. Brown. And I get it to a certain extent because like this is probably the highest his value is going to be. 27 in the peak of his career. So I guess I don't hate trading him, but I also agree with you too. Like when you enter a rebuild and you're like, it's going to be probably 2 or 3 years before I get back into it. I'm like, that is a long time, guys. And realistically, if you do this right, you don't need 2 or 3 years. You can do a reload in 1 year. Maybe it takes you 2, maybe, but yeah, I don't see a reason it should take you 3 years to get back into a rebuild.
The 2-year rebuilds, when I think of that, I'm thinking of like you take over an orphan team and it's just a mess. Then you're like, there's no way. Like that, if you're going to do a 2-year rebuild on that, absolutely. You probably need to. But like just thinking, oh, this guy scores points, so I've got to get rid of him. Not looking at his contract or not looking at his situation, who he's tied to, what the long term. There's guys that, they might be 28-year-old receivers, but for the next 3 years, they're going to be really good. So you don't have to trade everyone who's producing.
And if you think about it too, say you go into a rebuild and you have A.J. Brown, and he's 27 right now. When you come out of the rebuild in hopefully a year, let's say max 2 years, okay, you're trying to contend in 2 years, A.J. Brown will be 29. You're telling me you're not going to want to have A.J. Brown at that time? You will.
He's going to have 2 more years. He's going to have 2 more years of producing with his style of play where he's just hard to tackle. And I get it. If you're really fast, you're not as fast when you're 30 as you were when you're 27. But if you're really hard to tackle, you're hard to tackle at 30 just like you were when you were 27.
Derrick Henry's slowing down, but 250 pounds is 250 pounds.
He's hard to tackle, man. So, you don't have to. And I will say, and this isn't, I don't have this on my paper, but we can get into this a little bit. This applies to me more for receivers and tight ends, with the exception of Travis Kelce, who's 35. You can trade Travis Kelce. But I'm thinking of a Mark Andrews, who's getting up there in age a little bit. You don't have to trade Mark Andrews in a rebuild. You don't. He's a great rebuild piece. But for running backs, if I'm in a rebuild right now, the only running backs I'm really comfortable having on my team as a centerpiece is Bijan, Breece, and Gibbs. That's it. I like the outlook of some of the guys I mentioned them earlier, your mid-round guys, your Rashad Whites, your James Cooks, your Kenneth Walkers. Those are pretty good dynasty assets right now, I think, and they can help people win leagues this year. And you think they're pretty young, so I can keep up with them. I don't love their outlook 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road once their rookie contracts come up. So if I'm in a rebuild, the only running backs, young running backs, I'm really comfortable building around is Breece, Bijan, and Gibbs. I'm fine with those 3. After that, I'll trade James Cook, and I'd rather take an equivalent value receiver.
And that's where draft capital comes into play for a lot of it, especially for running backs like Bijan and Gibbs. There's 4 more years of team control just on their rookie contracts, and that's not factoring in they're assuming something tragic doesn't happen. They're going to get second contracts too, so that's 4 more years you can absolutely count on, plus probably another 2 with their second contract. So
I was going to say, those guys I mentioned, I love their outlooks this year. I think they're going to produce. I think they're good assets. But for a rebuild, if I'm looking at running backs, I'm like, I want this guy to be really good in 2 years, and I'm just not completely convinced about some of those mid-round guys.
Yeah.
Now, if they get extensions tomorrow, everything changes. But just where they're at right now.
And I'd be comfortable, too, in a rebuild. You mentioned it the last time you and I recorded. Like a guy like Jonathan Brooks, I'm okay going and get a Trey Benson, 2 guys that aren't going to be quite that this year. But James Conner's going to be gone next year. Jonathan Brooks is going to come back off his injury. They're going to be good down the road.
I forgot about Brooks is another one, and we talked about him last week in the buys video. He's another one I'm fine getting because of his draft capital and his outlook several years down the road. I love getting him. I talked about that ad nauseum last week. But as far as guys who are producing at running back right now, the big 3 is all I'm really. Even McCaffrey. I mean, a contender will give you everything for McCaffrey, so he should be on basically no rebuild rosters right now.
No, if you're rostering Christian McCaffrey as a rebuilder, you are in fact doing it wrong.
Yeah, you're playing fantasy wrong. You're playing dynasty wrong, I should say.
Yeah.
So,
all right, how many more tips we got, Landon?
Well, I was gonna do 2. Let me mention this one real quick. I'll be super quick.
We can do 2 more. I'm good with that.
This is the third one.
Okay.
If I'm doing a rebuild, I want to leave it with an elite tight end. Tight ends are just such a cheat code against the rest of your league because there's only a few young ones that produce. So if you can get a McBride, a Laporta, a Kincaid, we'll see about Pitts this year. If you can get one of those guys, Andrews, I want to leave my rebuild with one of them because they just give you such a premium on the rest of the league.
Yeah.
But going to the next thing, hold some of your producing players. This is the opposite of what we talked about in the contenders video. Contending video, I said hold your first until the later in the season trade deadline playoff start. As a rebuild, I want to hold a couple producing pieces till the trade deadline, till the playoffs start, till that, because they're just more valuable then. Like Mike Evans right now, I was talking about this earlier when we were talking about the show, and I pulled up on Keep Trade Cut. Like, there's no world where you trade Mike Evans right now straight up for a first round pick. There's just no value. Like, it's so far off value wise. I promise you, if it's week 14 and Mike Evans is wide receiver 11, some contender will send you a late first or a 26 first or whatever for Mike Evans. And you think I'm crazy. I'm telling you, you may think that would never happen in my league. It will happen in your league. Like, contenders get desperate. Ben, you've gotten desperate before. I've gotten desperate before.
I've been bitten by this bug before.
Yeah. So yeah, I would hold some of your producing assets, preferably wide receivers, because running backs, I want to get them off my roster just because they get hurt more. But wide receivers stay a little healthier. I mean, obviously they get banged up too, but if you could hold some receivers till the trade deadline, maybe a producing tight end like a David Njoku type, an Evan Ingram type, who you're not really who are not really building block pieces, I would do that.
Yeah. No, I like
that's a
that
mistake
too.
I made. That's a mistake I made in one of my rebuilds. Like, in one of my rebuilds last year in the granddaddy of them all, it was week 3 and I had no players anyone wanted because I had traded everybody. And we get to the we don't have a deadline anymore, but we did last year, like a week before the playoffs, and I had nothing. I was trying to trade anything.
You were sending stuff out to everybody. And I don't want this.
And I got nothing done. Because I had nothing anyone wanted. I think I traded Elijah Mitchell for 26th third. I think that was the only deal I got done at the deadline last year.
Fine.
So, but I mean, if you can hold an Amari Cooper.
I was going to mention Amari Cooper if you didn't. Like, that's one of those.
If you can hold an Amari Cooper, if you can hold a Deontay Johnson, and he's having a decent year in Carolina, some of those guys, then that's, if you can get a contender to bite on them at that point in the season, they'll give up more.
Yeah. No. All right. Keep us going.
My last tip, okay? And this one is this is the last stage of the rebuild, I would say. This is when you're flipping your rebuild into a contender. People think, Ben, that your rebuild is over when you've acquired the most value.
No.
And when I say most value, we're talking picks and young receivers, basically, and maybe if you're in a super flex, quarterback depth. Like, once you've acquired those things, your rebuild's done. That's how a lot of people view it. I'm done with the rebuild. Your rebuild is not done until you turn your team into a team that can contend. So you may have 8 wide receivers that you they're young enough and you kind of trust. You got some. I'll give an example of just my team in the granddaddy of them all. You may have a Tank Dell and a Rashee Rice and a Jaden Reed and some of those guys who are like young receivers people like. But I looked at my team and thought, so I'm not really rebuilding anymore. I've got a ton of value, but I can't win this league.
Yeah.
Like, I looked at my team and I was like, there's no way I win. So what do? I package some of that. I bring in a Jonathan Taylor. I bring in a Devontae Adams. I bring in guys who actually win you leagues. Devontae Adams is another one who, if you can hold on to the deadline,
somebody will give you a
pretty penny.
Yeah, that's a guy like you're getting a first and maybe something else. Like,
right.
If he's the wide receiver,
or just
9,
hold on to him until he gets traded to the Jets. And then as soon as he gets traded to the Jets, who knows what you'll get for him. But what was I saying? Oh, your rebuild is not over just because you have a bunch of picks and a bunch of young receivers. That the rebuild isn't over. The rebuild's in its final stages, but then you've got to package those guys. You got to package some of the picks that you don't need 6 first-round picks. You just don't. Like, it's good to have 6 first-round picks because they always go up in value. But when I have 6 first-round picks, I want to be selecting 3 and trading 3 to get players on my team that are going to win me the league. Your rebuild is not over until you can legitimately contend. It's not about value at the end of your rebuild. It's about, can I win the league? And if the answer is no, then you still have a few more steps. You got to package and make some trades to bring in running backs or whoever.
Yeah,
So
and I think that's a
my
point
last
that
tip.
people kind of get lost on. You like, because I guess the whole goal of when you rebuild is to acquire the most value on your team.
Right.
That's what you're trying to
Right.
do. But people
Yes.
kind of get lost.
You want to take no value losses in trades for rebuilds. No value losses. Right.
But people kind of get lost in that. I'm like, I don't know, is this the best value? I'm like, at the end of the day, why do we play fantasy football? We play fantasy football to win a championship.
You want to win.
And
you want to win.
At the end of the day, you've got to kind of do that. Like, at some point, like you and I have done this many times, we will overpay, sometimes to the point where like it's a gross, like it's a lot overpay.
Yeah.
But if I can get the guy who's going to put me in the championship, I'll do it.
Right. I want to win the league. I want to win the league. I
want my name when you click on league history to say winner, Ben Watts.
Yes. And I guarantee you a lot of people who are in this space who have Dynasty podcasts or have Dynasty like rankings and everything they post, and they have Discords and all that, they disagree with some of what we're saying here. But this is how I play. This is how I think you win. When you're in the bulk of your rebuild, when you're trying to acquire those young receivers and those picks and everything, you don't want to take any value losses in trades. But once it's time to flip to a contender, I'm okay with taking small value losses if it means you can win the league. Now you don't want to screw yourself for 2 years down the road. You don't want to go all in. All right, I'm going to get Travis Kelce and Derrick Henry and DeAndre Hopkins, and I'm not saying that.
And in the process, you lost Jonathan Brooks and Gibbs and all those guys. Like, oh gosh.
Right. But I'm okay with taking some small value losses. I'm okay with packaging Rashee Rice and Tank Dell to go get a package that includes Jonathan Taylor and Devontae Adams. Those are deals that get done in leagues. And I mean, maybe you say the values on one side or the other, whatever you say, you're definitely closer to winning your league with one side of that trade. And it's the Jonathan Taylor and Devontae Adams side. So that is, I'm just using that because that's a trade I made this offseason. But yeah.
Yeah, no,
your rebuild's not over till you are a contender.
I'm with you there because like you just get lost in the value, and you have to do it when you're rebuilding, but don't be that guy who continuously finishes third or fourth after you finish rebuilding. Like, go actually have a chance to win it.
And you always have multiple firsts the next year, and you always are one running back short. And you're like, dude, just trade a first. Go get a producing running back and win the league one time.
And like, even at that point, like you mentioned Rashad White and those guys, I'm like, that's when you can do it. Like, go get Rashad.
Yes.
Like, if you need a running back, go pay a first and a second for a Travis Etienne. That's fine.
Yeah, if you're flipping from, like, let's say it's time. Let's say I've rebuilt. I'm looking at the league. It's a 12-team league, and I've got 4 first-round picks this year. I've got the 102, 105, 7, and 9. Like, it's kind of spread out that way. I'm fine with sending one of those late firsts to go get a running back that's going to flip you from, hey, I'm a rebuild with a lot of value, to, okay, I'm a serious contender. I could win this league this year. I promise you, the league mates in the granddaddy of them all did not feel good when they saw the trade go through me acquiring Jonathan Taylor. The feeling was not good.
I didn't feel good.
And I promise you, I did. I typed that trade on Keep Trade Cut, and it said I lost by a significant margin. Now, again, the values are way different in that league, but at the end of the day, I can win the league at this point, and I couldn't say that before that trade. Before that trade, I couldn't win the league.
Yeah, no, your RB2 was like a Roshan Johnson. Like
it would have been a Jonathan Brooks at this point because I had the pick that took Brooks. But even then, like the first 8 weeks, what do you do? So your rebuild isn't over until you are a contender.
Ain't over till it's
That's
over.
the final step of the rebuild.
There's no, I love how there is no one set, like if you need to rebuild, you need to do this, 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 and this. There's a general idea of what you need to do, but so much more factors in just knowing your league, your size, and everything, and understanding values and understanding timing. Timing is so crucial to a rebuild. Anything else you want to say about this one?
This isn't really a tip, but here's kind of a tip. After all I just said, avoid a rebuild if you can. Like, don't be quick to rebuild. Like, you can reload. You can, there's ways to reload without going full rebuild, but sometimes full rebuild is the best option. So.
Yeah, I can confidently say, and I've had some stuff go obviously I've never won the league, but I've had some stuff go my way. In Mully, the granddaddy of them all, I've never rebuilt in that league. I mean, we've been doing Dynasty.
Season 8.
Yeah, season 8. I've never had to rebuild. And the team has always been a contender because there's things you can do, just like knowing when to trade X player for this. And just eventually, if you're good, you can get to kind of where it's just an engine of swapping out this guy and that guy, but you've got your centerpiece here and there. And
you hit on some second round picks, and that extends the time you don't have to rebuild.
Yeah,
so,
when
that's true.
When Justin Jefferson slips to like the 2-2,
okay,
that's a big one.
So at that point, none of us knew anything about fantasy.
No, we
knew nothing about Dynasty.
Blind luck.
Ben did get Justin Jefferson in the mid-second of that league, which I hate even saying that. People are going to stop listening to this podcast when they hear that.
Guys, this was like 4 or 5 years ago. All right.
This is a while back. We did not know anything. Gosh, we knew nothing.
This was 3 years before Josh and I even had the podcast, or maybe 2 years.
If y'all saw some of the trades that went through back then in our league,
and some of the draft boards,
you would, if you saw the draft board from this year, you'd have questions.
And this year, I feel like was at least semi-reasonable, except for there was a blatant
there was a
error.
couple head
There's
scratchers.
A blatant error in the second round.
There was
error.
A couple head scratchers, but so there you go. Tips for a rebuild, a few tips for contenders. But if you're rebuilding, you're trying to win the league and you're trying to be a serious playoff contender in 1 year, 2 at the most.
Yeah. Very solid. I enjoyed this, Landon. The NFL starts next week.
It's crazy. The next time we record will be Christmas Eve.
Christmas Eve. Not actual
real Christmas Eve, but football Christmas Eve.
Yeah, next
opening
time,
season, opening day Eve.
We'll be talking about maybe some Dynasty trades. We've been getting people to send those in. We'll break down just a few of those and maybe go on just some, I don't even know how we're going to go about it, but maybe just some Dynasty predictions, bold predictions. Maybe not bold. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see.
People who we think will rise the most, people who we think will fall the most, that kind of thing. So
I'm excited.
Should be good.
Well, other than that,
who's the next Puka? We're going to to predict with perfect accuracy who the next Puka is.
We will absolutely tell you. If you just put on your listening ears, you'll find out.
Go get this guy, and you'll never lose another Dynasty matchup.
Get Troy Franklin.
Go get Devontae Walker, and it's over. It's over. You're never.
The league is locked.
He's going to be the RB6 next, or the wide receiver 6 going into next offseason. So
you can't confidently tell me with 100% it won't happen.
I can. 100%.
Feel pretty good about it. All right. Well, that's all we got for the day, boys. We will see you.